I created this project to educate people because I feel like we have been able to finally have a platform to tell the stories of our abuse, but that's kind of where it has ended, and for most people, and that is not the end of our stories. You know, once the abuse ends, we struggle for a long time. You know, not everyone. You know, trauma is different for everyone. How people cope is different for everyone. But I think the underlying thread that stays the same is that when we are all going through what we are going through, whether it is the abuse or the aftermath, a lot of us feel alone. And there are people that we surround ourselves with that haven't experienced trauma or the type of trauma that we have experienced, and they think, in some cases, that we should get over it, or get over it quicker, or cope differently, or just go to therapy, or just forget it. And the problem is that it's not that easy. We run into a problem where we are dealing with the stigmas behind PTSD, and everything that goes along with the aftermath of trauma. My name is Cari Mercer. I'm 43 years old, and I'm a survivor of domestic and sexual abuse. I have numerous physical disorders that are actually attached to my abuse. And trying to explain to someone why I'm sick sometimes is very difficult, because they don't quite understand why I let it get that far. And we'll take my adrenal disorder as, for example. I have too much adrenaline and not enough cortisol. And the cortisol in my system, or in anybody's system, is supposed to counteract the adrenaline. But I spent years in a relationship where I was being yelled at, screamed at, scared. Anytime there was a conversation, I would tense up, because if I said something wrong, it would make him mad. And so I would get that adrenaline rush that you get when you're scared, and that fight or flight response. And when you spend years dealing with that, your body depletes itself of cortisol. And that wasn't the only relationship that I had been in where that was a problem. I had spent many, many, many years in that same fight or flight mode. So by the time I was 36 years old, I had no cortisol in my system. And I was getting so tired that I would nearly pass out. And if I didn't take a nap right then and there, felt like I was dying. And I would have these tremors that almost looked like seizures, but I was wide awake. And then I looked like I had Parkinson's, and you couldn't figure out what was going on, but I was having these adrenaline surges because I didn't have the hormone to counteract it. And then because of that, I ended up with hypothyroidism. And when I had been in my one relationship, the stress had gotten so bad that I had gotten down to 98 pounds, and I had lost a lot of my hair. And I ended up with fibromyalgia, which is a pain disorder. And so couple that with anxiety and depression and, you know, oh, how do you explain to people I can't get out of bed? You look healthy. That's something I get a lot. You look healthy. I do. I actually look very healthy. And on some days I feel healthier than others. But then there are some days that I cannot move because all of those physical things end up catching up with me. So I felt like it was time for people to tell that side of their story. And maybe it was selfish on my part because I was tired of explaining to people why I don't work or why I don't, why I'm no longer in the military when that was my 20-year plan. Why I can't do certain things that most people at my age can do. Why I'll disappear from time to time. At 12, 13 years after and being removed from the trauma, I am still digging myself out of a hole. That I am still dealing with nightmares and triggers and physical and mental issues because of it. That I deal with disassociation. That I have startle responses, that I have sexual dysfunction, I have trouble being affectionate, that I have inability to look people in the eye, that my level of trust in people is very low. I had someone tell me once years ago to just get over it. And, you know, it sounds logical. And at the time I was, you know, I hadn't had the last marriage. And I was, I think, newly involved or newly married to my first husband. So, you know, there was some damage that had been done, but I was still in a position where maybe I wasn't as dark and jaded. But I got so angry when she said that. And I still get angry when people say that, and then I have to stop and I have to think, you know, I don't think people realize what trauma, especially prolonged trauma, can do to a person. What it does to the brain, what it does to the body, what it can literally do to the makeup of a person. And, you know, just imagine every time you are hurt or assaulted, or just simpler, you know, someone just starts poking you with a pencil and you just have these holes and scars. It just changes you. It just changes the look of your arm. It changes the structure of your arm, and you end up with all these holes and scars in your arm. And it's the same concept internally. You know, every time you are assaulted, you know, I was with my ex 3 years, and it was an everyday occurrence. Imagine being stabbed with that pencil every single day for 3 years. Imagine what your arm would look like. So, what do you think that does to your psyche? What do you think that does to your heart, to your soul, to your, you know, to every part of your body? You know, I read somewhere that PTSD rewires your brain. And so, you know, I'm not the same person I was 23 years ago. And I was assaulted the first time 25 years ago. So, it's a long time. Now, granted, I have been with my husband for 11 years, and most people would think, well, okay, there's 11 years to heal. There's 11 years you should have gotten better. But here's the thing. I spent all those years trying to survive. I went every single day trying to worry about whether it was going to be my last, whether I was going to be able to function, whether I was going to have to pack up my children and run, whether I was going to mentally make it. There was a point in time where the nightmares were getting so bad, and the flashbacks were getting so bad that I started trying to shove them into a vault in the back of my brain and just push them away and push them away. And it wasn't working. So I did what I call a memory dump. And I just started forgetting everything. There are parts of my life that I don't remember at all. Periods of my life. And unfortunately, that involves things with my kids. And my kids will ask me things like, hey, Mom, do you remember when I did this? And I'm like, I don't remember anything from that time period. And unfortunately, I forget the most when they were little. And that's heartbreaking to me because I couldn't forget the bad without forgetting the good. And there was very little good, but that good involved my children, and I can't remember that stuff. But I had to forget because it was literally eating me up inside. It was killing me, and I wasn't sleeping. I mean, I'm doing better now with sleep, but I have nightmares, but in a different way. And they're different people, and in different forms. I have very vivid, lucid dreams, which can be very painful. But my short-term memory is also shot because I developed that ability to forget things as soon as they go in my brain. And my desire to remember things that even people tell me. I used to try to remember everything everybody ever said because I wanted to make sure that I paid attention so that when, you know, I could reiterate exactly what came back because I never wanted to be questioned that I wasn't paying attention. And that I don't do that anymore. I don't remember what you said 2 seconds after you said it. I will remember it 2 weeks later, which is weird. So I still do commit it to memory, but I won't remember it right away. The more you tell me I should do it your way, the less I'm going to do it. Because I was always told my way or the highway. And it was never room for me to do it with any of my own imagination or my own skill or my own, problem solving. So now I don't care. I'm going to do it. Except for when it comes to my husband. For some reason, I just let him do everything. Don't know why. I mean, I still do fall back into some patterns. But for healthier reasons. And I think with him, it's because I genuinely want to make sure this is a partnership. And I genuinely want to make sure that he doesn't feel like I am trying to control everything, because the thing with PTSD is that you do try to control your environment. You do try to control the people around you. You do try to control things so that things don't happen again. And there are 7 people in our household. There are 5 children and the 2 of us and 2 dogs. So it would get very ugly if I tried to control that. So I try not to. I'm sure my kids will say I'm a helicopter parent, but I try to make a conscious effort not to be, because I know that I am neurotic, and I use that as a loose term, but I am neurotic because of my trauma. I have to make sure that every boy that walks in the door, I don't look at him with a filter of you're going to molest my child and hurt them and be like every other man in my life. So raising a son, I have 2. I have a stepson and my son. That was challenging for me because making sure that I didn't look at them and beat certain things into them because of my own filters. And I think I did a very good job of that, actually. Not ruling with an iron fist or overprotection or doing the things that I could be doing because I had been hurt myself was a challenge, but having a person in my life who was able to be that voice of reason helped. I do take credit for making conscious efforts on a daily basis to not be what I could be. It is a challenge, it is a fight every day for me to keep the PTSD at bay, to keep all the things that I could be doing somewhere else. I literally want to scream every day because not going crazy is painful, because I just literally want to go crazy. I'm never going to be what other people think is normal, and I had to learn to accept that. This is my new normal. I am a constant work in progress, just like everyone else, but I am constantly trying to work on the things that have changed because of my trauma. We all have a story to tell. There are so many of us that live with trauma and live with the aftermath of trauma, and there are some that are able to move past it better than others. There are some people that may function better than others, but it is no one can judge anyone for how they deal with it. There is no blanket fix for trauma. There's no formula that cures everyone. Each abuser is different. Each person who is abused is different. Each situation is different. And it is not our job to tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do with their trauma. You know, there are so many people who are worse off than I am. You know, they weren't able to find their happily ever after. There are unfortunately people here that can't speak about their trauma because their story didn't end well. And then there are those who experienced trauma, found a way to move past it, and are better for it. We're not spending our lives feeling sorry for ourselves. We are constantly trying to find ways to move the puzzle pieces and create a new picture of what our life is supposed to be. There's a difference between accepting and settling. And, you know, I'm not settled with this is my life and this is the way it's going to be. I am constantly trying to make sure that things get better. But I'm not going to sit there and beat myself up about it anymore, because I spent quite a few years feeling very, very guilty for the fact that I was the way I was, and I was so embarrassed about it that that I wasn't willing to even be truthful about it, because people want to sit there and assume things, and they want to speculate because they don't understand. When you think the story has ended, go a little bit further. If you're with someone who has experienced trauma, do a little research and figure out what happens after. Listen when they speak. That doesn't mean that you, as the person who lives with the survivor, has to put up with everything. There are times when I act completely irrational, and I understand that my husband doesn't have to put up with certain things because I am being irrational, and he waits for me to stop being irrational, and then I come back and I'm able to, we all know in my house I have a logical brain and an illogical brain, and they don't match all the time, but when they finally do, then I'm able to have a discussion with my illogical brain, and then I come back and I talk to the people in my household and apologize. But if you are willing to be with someone who has sustained trauma, especially a lot of trauma, take the time to research what that means. Learn about PTSD. Learn about what triggers are or what it means. Understand that it is not something that changes overnight. Even if you are the most loving, affectionate, soft person, and they have dealt with sexual assault, they are not going to bend to your charms and be cured of everything right away. And they may never. But you will see a difference from the first time you met to, wherever you're at that point. And just love them. Because in all of it, especially with domestic abuse, what they lacked was true love, real love. My ex-husband used to tell me nobody would love me the way he did. And God, thank God, my husband now doesn't. Because I don't want to be loved that way. And, I used to hear people, well, maybe in his own way he loved you. No, he did not. None of them did. None of them loved me. Because if they did, they would not have treated me like that. They would have not have disrespected me the way they did. It doesn't have to be a spouse or a significant other. It can be a friend. But love them. And sometimes just loving them and being patient allows them to heal and be safe and find that safe space to heal.